Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. MJ, I know you're off the stage, but thank you for that wonderful introduction. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you to the Young America's Foundation for having me, but also for putting on this phenomenal conference, hosting all of you. This is, I know you understand this, but as someone who is a decade older than you, you are having an experience that will impact you for your whole life, especially your whole political life. So soak it all up, enjoy it all. Thank you to Governor Walker for all that you do, and a special thanks. Is Pat Coyle in the room? Where are you, Pat? The lights are blinding me. Where is Pat? Pat, thank you for everything you do to make all of this possible and all of the speeches on college campuses all year round possible. It's an amazing thing that you have here, and we deeply appreciate all the work that you do. So tonight, I was planning to talk about climate change, but you know, something else happened today. So I thought maybe we should talk about that instead. This, my friends, is a truly joyous day. This is a day that should be celebrated. The Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This is... I mean, I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around the fact that this has happened, that this is reality. It's insane that we are alive to see this. 49 years, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, and it's gone. It is gone. One of the things, you can clap all you want. One of the things that I was thinking as I was pulling this around in my mind today is I was thinking that number, 49 years, is really significant. I was at the March for Life in January, and there was a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, a lot of questions about, will this be the last March for Life? Will this be the last time that we get together to protest this egregious Supreme Court ruling? Will next year, will the Supreme Court have overturned this? And I thought to myself, it's hard for us, especially as young conservatives, to think about what 49 years means, because this has been a multi-generational fight to overturn Roe v. Wade. And the takeaway from this little musing that I had this afternoon was this ought to encourage us as young conservatives, as those who are going to be holding the reins of the conservative movement and the Republican Party for the next generation. It will be you and I who are deciding what our country will be and which direction we will turn, whether we will continue to be the greatest nation the world has ever known or whether we will not. That is our responsibility, that's our duty, that's our burden, that's our privilege. And I thought, this tells us, the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade after 49 years tells us that the culture wars matter. There's a segment of the conservative movement and the Republican Party that don't want to touch social issues. They don't want to touch abortion. They don't want to touch the transgender ideology. They don't want to touch critical race theory. They just want to be lower taxes, you know, foreign policy guys. They just want to stay away from the uncomfortable topics. And this is dead wrong. And it's been proved today that we as young people have this desire for instant gratification, right? When we start fighting a fight, we think, okay, we're going to push back against critical race theory, and we want it banned next month. We want to push back against transgender ideology, queer theory in schools, and we want it banned tomorrow. We don't want to see this. We don't want to see this continue even until the end of the year. And I thought, there have been pro-life activists who have been spending 49 years fighting and praying and working at the legislative level for this. And if this doesn't show us, if this doesn't energize us and help us create the stamina to fight these culture wars, even when these fights are half a century, then I don't know what does. And you all sitting in this room today are in a very unique position when it comes to the beginning of this fight, because that's what we're at. We're at the beginning of a fight about abortion. And you're in a very unique position because you are here, because you have the privilege and the opportunity to learn from speakers that are hosted by the Young America's Foundation, because you're at this conference, because YAF is so committed to helping train you, helping empower you to fight these very fights, not just economic issues, not just foreign policy issues, but culture wars. So appreciate that, understand that, and take a moment and reflect on the responsibility that, that you have in this area. So my daughter is 17 months old, and holding her today in the wake of this ruling from the Supreme Court was even different than it was a month ago when that leaker dropped when the leaker leaked the draft majority opinion. That was unexpected, and so it felt more emotional in a sense. And today, the feeling is almost more surreal. Is this real? And all I could think of when I was chasing my little girl around who didn't, want a diaper change, and who was throwing her lunch on the floor, I thought, I remember what this little girl felt like when she was flopping around, swimming her laps inside my belly when I was pregnant with her. And I thought about how many little babies are going to be saved because of this ruling. This is quite something, my friends. So often, my generation and yours, millennials and Gen Z, struggle with feeling a purpose in life. We struggle with what our meaning is. We struggle with what we ought to do in the bigger picture, not just on a day-to-day basis. And we're jealous. I've been jealous in a sense before, thinking about people, generations of our country, of our countrymen who made our lives possible. We feel this drifting, this lack of purpose, because we're so fortunate to enjoy the prosperity that was handed to us. This prosperity was begot by the greatest generation that fought the Nazis, that ended communism, that ended socialism, that made our free market economy and our constitutionally protected rights, that protected them, that saved them, that promoted them. And because of that, we look at the greatest generation and we call them the greatest generation. And what do we call each other? Like Zoomers or something? It's not really equal here, but today we have now experienced a historical event that is on par with the greatest generation. We have experienced a historical event which is of equal significance as the end of slavery in our nation. A historical event of equal significance as the end of the Holocaust at the hands of the Nazis in Germany. You and I have lived this, have been part of fighting for this, for the rights of these people. And not everyone can say this. Not everyone is as privileged to be in this position to fight this fight as we are. And you've had speakers here talk about first principles, right? Yes, this is not a rhetorical question. Yes? Talk to you about first principles, this idea that there are some things at the baseline that are just true. You don't have to believe that gravity is real, but even if you believe it's not real, it's still real. You don't have to believe that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and a man can't be a woman and a woman can't be a man, but that doesn't, thank you. That doesn't change the reality. That doesn't change the fact that a man is a man and can't be a woman, regardless of what you feel or what you believe or how you identify. And I was reminded of that because today is the feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Gotta love all the Catholics in the room and a couple Baptists. And maybe even a couple Baptists down here in front who might convert based on the fact that Roe v. Wade was overturned on the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and that's not a coincidence. All right, so fun fact about Roe v. Wade and what happened in this overturning. So there were more female Supreme Court justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade then how many female Supreme Court justices voted to codify Roe v. Wade originally? Remember, there were 0 women on the Supreme Court when 9 male justices invented the right to abortion in Roe v. Wade, and Amy Coney Barrett voted to repeal it. This is an interesting fact, I thought. This is a stunning fact because this is not something that you will hear from the left. This is not something that you will hear them discussing as they completely ignore the legal arguments that were inherent to these rulings. So essentially what the Supreme Court wrote in their over 200 pages of opinions is they wrote that there is no right to abortion in the United States Constitution. That nowhere in the Constitution is it even implied that there might be a right to abortion. That a right to abortion, or abortion itself, is not in the history or the fabric of our nation. That precedent, stare decisis, if you want to be specific, must be overturned. There is no such thing as settled law that's so settled that it can't be overturned if it's wrong. In fact, there's a duty of justices at the Supreme Court level to overturn precedent when it is wrong precedent. And therefore, this issue must be returned to the states. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Now, today, it's been overturned. So what does that mean for states around the country, especially red states? It means that in Idaho, abortion will now be illegal. It means in Utah, abortion will now be illegal. It means in Wyoming, abortion will now be illegal. It means in North Dakota and South Dakota, abortion will now be illegal. And some of these states have what are called trigger laws, which means that in the coming days, attorneys general will decide to enforce these laws prohibiting abortion. But as of today, the state of Texas, the state of Missouri, and the state of Arkansas, abortion is right now illegal. Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, that's right, let's go. Tennessee and Kentucky, abortion will now be illegal. And what we're also seeing today, the very day that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, we're seeing abortion clinics closing. In Alabama, abortion facilities have already shut down. In Texas, appointments for abortions have been completely discontinued. They're done. And let's talk about Planned Parenthood. In Wisconsin, Planned Parenthood has suspended their abortion services. Here's my question. Here's my question for Planned Parenthood, though. Why would they be closing down clinics if only 3% of their services are actually abortion services, like they told us it was? Today, my friends, is the day that all of their lies become clear. These leftists have convened a kangaroo court in the House of Representatives, the January 6th committee, targeting President Trump because they don't want him to run for president again, and trying to criminalize your free speech and my free speech. They tell us that they care about insurrections. They tell us they care about threats to democracy. Well, let me tell you, they don't care about insurrections.
You see this turnout here? You ain't seen nothing yet. Women are going to control their bodies no matter how they try and stop us. The hell with the Supreme Court. We will defy them. Women will be in control of their bodies.
That's loud enough that Congresswoman Maxine Waters probably heard that herself in Washington, D.C. To hell with the Supreme Court, she said. We will defy them. They tell us they care about insurrections, but they don't. They tell us they care about democracy, but what happens when Roe v. Wade is overturned by the Supreme Court? It doesn't make abortion illegal. It sends it back to the states. That is, for better or for worse, my one issue with the Supreme Court ruling is I don't think it should be left to the states. I think abortion should be illegal at a federal level. But the left claims that they care about democracy. They don't. The left also tells us that they care about women. But do they?
What the Supreme Court just did was that they chose to endanger the lives of all women and all birthing people in this country. But not only that, they've chosen to strip rights from men too, because frankly, the right to our own bodies and the right to form our families, this is something that belongs to all of us, and it does not belong to lawmakers. It does not belong to 9 Supreme Court justices.
The left says they care about women, but who's erased when Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez uses the phrase birthing people? Women are erased. The left says that they care, they claim that they care about babies, but they don't, and we're gonna get back to that point in a moment. But how did this happen? How did we get to a point after 49 years that Roe v. Wade is no longer the law of our land? There's a very simple answer to this, my friends. Thanks to President Donald Trump. Now, I have to admit, this one made me laugh because when President Trump was asked whether he played a role in the Supreme Court overturning Roe, since he nominated 3 justices who are currently sitting on the Supreme Court, all 3 of whom voted to overturn Roe, this is what he said: God made the decision. Not what I expected him to say, but hey, the man's right. In 2016, there was division in the conservative movement and in the Republican Party about whether President Trump should be the nominee. There were those who supported him based on his attitude towards the mainstream media and his promises to drain the swamp. And then there were those who were against him, the never-Trumpers, who told us that he would not govern in a conservative way, that he was not a conservative at heart, that he was a fraud and a phony and had a big ego. And those who supported Trump said, well, maybe he won't be the most conservative president. We don't know. He hasn't been in office before. But what he has done is he's released a list of names of people who, if he gets the opportunity to appoint a new justice to the Supreme Court, he has promised to pick from that list. And the people on that list were constitutionally sound jurists. And it turned out that that argument that, well, if Trump appoints justices to the Supreme Court, enough of them that Roe v. Wade is overturned, it doesn't matter what else he does, that turned out to be true. President Trump is responsible for what happened today. And so, by the way, is Mitch McConnell. Now, Mitch McConnell, I have a lot of beef with Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is not a conservative. Mitch McConnell is not principally a conservative. He, well, we all know this, don't we? His wife has ties to the Chinese Communist Party. He is deep within the corrupt swamp of Washington, D.C., but let me tell you, Mitch McConnell is a crazy good politician. If it weren't for Mitch McConnell, we wouldn't have Neil Gorsuch, we wouldn't have Brett Kavanaugh, and we wouldn't have Amy Coney Barrett on the bench because Mitch McConnell almost single-handedly corralled the Republican Party, who were hesitant to allow Amy Coney Barrett to be nominated because Trump was about to leave office. The Democrats were perpetuating this narrative that when a president is about to leave office in an election year, it's improper. It's improper for that president to exercise his right as chief executive and nominate a new justice of the Supreme Court, and we should wait on that until after the election and let the new president do that. And there were even some Republicans who were falling for this narrative, and in comes Cocaine Mitch. And what does he say? He says, look at your history books. Look at your history books, and you will see that there is historical precedent that when the Senate is held by the party, the opposite party of the president in the White House, that the president typically does not nominate a Supreme Court justice during an election year. But when the Senate is held by the majority is held by the same party as the president, as was true with President Trump and the Republican majority in the Senate, then it's absolutely, historically, totally fine to do this. If it weren't for Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump and Chuck Grassley on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Roe v. Wade would still be the law of the land. Roe v. Wade would not be overturned if it weren't for these three men. We also owe Senator Harry Reid gratitude, because what Harry Reid did is he abolished the filibuster for judicial nominees, the filibuster requiring 60 votes to overcome. And Harry Reid didn't want 60 votes. He didn't want to have to get Republicans to vote with him. He abolished it, and it came back to bite him. Because do you think we would have gotten 60 votes in the Senate to confirm Brett Kavanaugh? No, we wouldn't. Thanks to Harry Reid, a radical leftist Democrat, his policy came back and bit him. It's also thanks to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg, hear me out on this one. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg had retired when she should have retired, instead of staying on the court, if she had retired during the Obama administration, instead of staying on the court during the Trump administration because she wanted to, for her own enjoyment, her own indulgence, then Barack Obama would have appointed a liberal justice. But she didn't, she stayed. These factors, one of these factors without the other would never have led to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. We also owe a debt of gratitude for Brett Kavanaugh. If he had not fought back, if he had not taken the talking points that were prepared for him during his confirmation hearings when he was falsely accused of sexual misconduct, if he had not thrown those talking points out the window and spoken to the Senate and spoken to the American people with grit, with emotion, and with truth, if he had not fought back against the Democrat machine that would smear his reputation and ruin his name, then the Supreme Court would not have overturned Roe v. Wade because he would not be on the court. And finally, if it weren't for pro-lifers, those who have been castigated as the religious right, the pro-life lobby, if it weren't for pro-lifers who spent decades fighting for this, the Supreme Court would not have overturned Roe v. Wade. This conglomeration of unlikely comrades, if this had not all come together at this moment in this way with these individual decisions, we would not be experiencing the moment of history that we are experiencing right now. And it calls us to be very careful when we're choosing our fighters, to be very careful when we enter the culture war who we have joined forces with. Because back in 2020, David French tweeted, he said, and I quote, David French, by the way, is one of the individuals who is known to be one of the thought leaders of the Never Trump movement. And this is what he tweeted. He said, "I'm told that if I don't support Trump, I'll have the blood of unborn children on my hands. Is this true?" He said. "The short answer is no. A longer look at the issue shows presidents don't have much influence over abortion at all." If we had listened to that counsel, if we had joined forces with that group of never Trumpers, the Supreme Court would not have overturned Roe v. Wade. And that brings us back to what the left won't tell you about what's happening today. What you will not see in any of the angry TikToks, any of the raging tweets, any of the very long Instagram stories that we're seeing from all of these leftists who are crying, the ones screaming outside of the Supreme Court, they won't. Even the video, did you guys see the video that Dave Portnoy posted? You saw that, right? What did he not say in that video? He didn't address once the fact that an unborn baby is a unique, distinct human person. The radical left knows they've lost this battle at a cultural level, not just a legal level, because they know what we all know, that a human life begins at the moment of conception, and that human baby has a unique DNA distinct from her mother or her father, and that if we as a nation start picking certain groups and certain demographics of people, particularly based on their location, maybe their residence temporarily inside a womb, if we start picking who deserves to be protected and who deserves to enjoy their constitutionally protected rights, then where does that end? Haven't we been down that path in our country before, where politicians have abused their power and discriminated against certain people with certain characteristics because they thought they had a right to do it? You will never hear a leftist engage with the reality, the fact that an unborn baby is an unborn baby. You also won't hear from the left the fact that the woman who brought this case to the Supreme Court is the Attorney General of the state of Mississippi. Her name is Lynn Finch. She's a single mom. And she took this case all the way to the Supreme Court. What does the left tell single moms? That they can't do it, that they need an abortion. And the woman who legally fought to overturn this at the highest court in our land is a single mom who proved them wrong. The left also won't tell you that when an 18-year-old girl in Texas finds out that she's unexpectedly and unintentionally pregnant with twins, that it's pro-lifers who raise tens of thousands of dollars to help her take care of her beautiful children who would not have been born had Texas not outlawed abortion last year. This is what the left won't tell you about what's happening today. And you know what else the left won't tell you? Who the leaker is. Who the leaker is. Wouldn't you like to see this individual today? That's a TikTok I'd like to see. That's a TikTok I'd like to see. So what does this mean for us? What does this mean for us moving forward? It means that today is a day that we should celebrate, that today is a day of great joy. It means that we have to understand that this is not the end of the fight for the unborn. This is the beginning of the fight. Because now this fight will not just be at the federal level in front of the Supreme Court, it will be in every single capital, in every single state across the country. And it's up to us to decide what the next generation of our country will be, whether they will be protected or whether they will be vulnerable to the radical left who want to kill them. And so I invite you to be part of this. I invite you to pray and to celebrate and to understand your responsibility and your privilege to be exactly where you are today, and to be grateful to God that we are the post-Roe generation. Thank you so much.
For some student questions. Students, please come up, say your name, your school, and ask one brief question.
Hi, I'm Brielle. I'm from Colorado, and my question is, just today since the Supreme Court ruling, there's been a lot of talk of how women will attempt to commit abortions themselves and kill themselves in the process. How would you respond to someone saying that? And also, I heard that Alaska is giving away free flights to have women get abortions in Alaska.
Alaska Airlines, I heard that too. That's totally nuts to me. I won't be flying Alaska Air if that's what they're going to be doing. When we face woke corporations, we should make sure that they understand the phrase, if you go woke, you're gonna go broke. In answer to your second question, I think that we should start with a very sad reality, and that is that women die of legal abortions. in our country. When an abortion is committed, a baby always dies, and that's a tragedy and it's dangerous, and there's no such thing as a safe abortion. And many women in our country die at the hands of abortionists, even when abortion is legal. That being said, the left has propagated for decades now this false narrative that 2 million women have attempted coat hanger abortions, and that that hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, have died. This is factually false. If you look at the CDC numbers that track how many women have died of legal abortions and illegal abortions, it is always the case that there are more women who die of legal abortions than illegal abortions, and we shouldn't be afraid to say that. I can post a link to the exact data on my Instagram after the speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lottie, and I am homeschooled. My question is that I've been seeing a lot of arguments on Instagram. Like the main one I see is that if this decision really was about saving babies' lives, then the justices would vote, instead of overturning Roe versus Wade, they would instead make more laws about like free contraception and free baby supplies and that sort of thing. And because they're not doing that, it's really only about power and control, and that's the number one thing I've been seeing on Instagram so far. So, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, there's a couple things. First of all, the Supreme Court has no right, no authority to distribute baby supplies. So anybody saying that doesn't understand how our government works from a nerdy practical standpoint. The Supreme Court rules on whether laws are constitutional. They're not a legislature. They're not a government body that has any power to give things away. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's a false argument to claim that pro-lifers don't care about children after they're born, and that's the essence of this argument, right? And it's such a false narrative. It would be like, if you'll indulge me in an analogy here, it would be like a scientist who researched cancer and maybe found a cure for cancer coming up to him and saying, "Why do you hate people with MS?" Because they didn't focus their time and energy, their money, and their research on that disease. They focused it on not MS, but on cancer, right? This is the same thing with children in poverty or unborn babies. They're actually separate entities, and bear with me on this. They're separate entities. You can focus on one thing or prioritize the life of these children first, and it doesn't mean that you don't care about the other topics, right? The same as that cancer researcher doesn't hate people with Alzheimer's. His focus is on people with cancer. So that's the same with pro-lifers. They focus on the unborn baby. It doesn't mean that they don't care about babies outside the womb. It's that's their political priority. All of that being said, pro-lifers and Christians and conservatives across our country are the ones who focus the most on giving of their money, their time, and their efforts, their themselves to women who are facing unplanned pregnancies and moms who are single moms who chose life. You can look at the statistics about fostering children. Who does that the most? Christians and conservatives. You can look at adoption statistics. Who does that the most? Christians and conservatives. You can look at church programs. Who sponsors programs to support single mothers, to support young married couples, to support these little children? Conservatives and Christians do. We do, as Christians and conservatives, support safety nets, even government safety nets for people who are struggling. It's a false narrative. It's a lie. From the left that we don't. What we don't support is we don't support exploiting unborn babies and exploiting women who are facing unplanned pregnancies or single moms. We don't support exploiting them as an excuse to grow government in the image that the left wanted it to be in the first place. So it's if you can fit all that on an Instagram slide in response to all these stories that you've seen, go ahead and shoot it on over to me.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Allison Nishimura. I go to Crescenta Valley Christian Academy. So liberals are saying that tonight they're going to have a night of rage. Do you think that this night of rage is going to morph into a reenactment of the BLM riots? And if so, what can we do about it?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't predict the future, but if I had to make an educated guess, I would say yes. I would say that they are planning to be violent because they have no legal argument in favor of abortion. They have no cultural argument in favor of abortion. They have no scientific argument in favor of abortion. They have nothing except to terrorize the American public and to try to intimidate and coerce lawmakers into pushing their radical abortion agenda. I think this is exacerbated by the fact that Democrats in the Biden administration, President Biden himself, but specifically his Attorney General Merrick Garland, has not issued a statement saying very clearly, in no uncertain terms, that any violence will not be tolerated. Anybody committing violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of this law if you attack a pregnancy center, if you attack a Catholic church, if you attack the Supreme Court, if you attack a police officer, if you commit vandalism, if you commit arson, if you are violent in any way that violates a law, you should be held accountable. And we don't hear from Democratic elected officials condemnation in advance. We don't hear Democrat elected officials leading their people away from this. What we hear AOC outside of the Supreme Court chanting illegitimate, take to the streets, take to the streets. And somehow I doubt she means peacefully take to the streets. Somehow I doubt I would guess that she means more what Maxine Waters was calling for, to get up in Republican faces, Trump supporters' faces. So what can we do about this is we can make sure that people see this, because it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. We don't want our cities burned down. We don't want our rule of law torn down. And the more people that know the truth about what's happening, the more pressure we'll put on our elected officials to make sure that those who are committing this terrorism in the name of the abortion agenda are held to account.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Isaac. I attended the University of Central Oklahoma, and I'm very grateful for this decision. I've been on campus, obviously fighting against abortion, debating people who are liberal, especially because I'm in the liberal arts department all day. So my question is, with the decision obviously being leaked by, of course, Justice Alito, and then going, there, I guess, to the other justices, and obviously someone leaking it out, what exactly do you think should happen to the person who leaked it? Because there doesn't seem to be really any specific things that really regulate to where they can't leak it or they can leak it.
Right.
So what do you think should happen, and what do you think should happen, and what can we do?
Yeah.
And also, working on a campaign, obviously, for someone to voting for someone who is, very conservative is obviously very important. And so with that, fighting for those conservative values are very important. So who do you believe will provide those conservative values and not spend as much money in 2024? Personally, I believe Ron DeSantis, but what do you believe?
Okay, well, let me answer your first question about the leaker first. So it's an interesting legal question, because there's not a statute that says a Supreme Court clerk may not leak a draft majority opinion, because it's never happened before, because this is new. This has never been done before. There are legal theories that this individual could be charged with either obstruction of an official proceeding, essentially obstruction of justice, or perhaps theft of government property, because they had no right to handle this and release it to the media the way that they did. So I think that those legal options should be explored, because what this leaker did was intentionally put the Supreme Court justices in danger in an effort to coerce them to rule the way that this leaker wanted them to rule in a pro-abortion way. By leaking this opinion, we saw what happened outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house. There was an assassin who attempted to kill him. Perhaps his family, we don't know, but an assassin came with the attempt to murder the Kavanaughs. We've seen these rabid pro-abortion people outside of Amy Coney Barrett's house. We know that there are serious, legitimate threats to their safety based on the anticipation of this ruling, and that came, of course, because the leaker leaked this. So this person should be held to the fullest extent of the law. We, the American people, deserve to know who this is. We deserve to know who deliberately attempted to sway and damage our balance of power, our separate but equal branches of government. The pool of how many people this could be is very small. It's about 12 people, 12 liberal Supreme Court clerks who this could be. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who this is. I firmly believe that the Supreme Court knows who this is. And I firmly believe the Biden administration knows who this is. And we, the American people, should demand that that leaker's name is revealed and that person is held to account. So that's the first thing. Your second question was essentially whether I want Trump or DeSantis in 2024, right?
Yes.
Okay. I like how everyone asks that question in a very euphemistic way because they don't want to be direct, but I'll just answer it direct. I think that President Trump did a very good job as president for the first 3 years of his presidency. I think that he governed in a very conservative way. I think he fulfilled his promises, except, well, I guess he never promised not to spend, but he spent too much, as Republicans do. I don't think that President Trump handled COVID well. I think that he mishandled that, elevating Fauci, pushing this vaccine, scolding Georgia when they tried to open up from the lockdowns. I don't support at all how he handled COVID-19. In addition to that, I think that one of the other flaws of the Trump administration was who he surrounded himself with. He did not surround himself with good, wise, judicious people. He surrounded himself with, a lot of suck-ups and deep staters and morons. And those two factors, the fact that he mishandled COVID and who he surrounds himself with, I don't see a lot of evidence that he's learned his lesson since then. And so if he decides to run for president in 2024 and he becomes the Republican nominee, I will wholeheartedly support him because I think he was a good president and he's certainly a whole heck of a lot better than any Marxist communist that the Democrats are offering us. That being said, I do think that it is time for Donald Trump to pass the torch. I think that we have a lot of options of stalwart conservatives who are younger than Trump, who have embraced conservative principles. I think DeSantis is a good option. I will tell you very upfront that I don't like any politician. I refuse to elevate any politician in any party to a pedestal. I will never be team so-and-so or team so-and-so. I will always judge a politician based on what I want a president to do, and then I will judge them based on each and everything that they do individually and not in a holistic sense. So when I say that it's time for President Trump to pass the torch or that DeSantis looks like a good option, that's not me elevating DeSantis in any way, shape, or form. My opinion could change tomorrow depending on what he does or what someone else, maybe a senator, maybe another governor, maybe another Republican, does in the interim. But we shouldn't, as conservatives, be afraid to have this conversation. We shouldn't be afraid of one politician thinking that we're loyal or disloyal, because we shouldn't be loyal to a politician. We should be loyal to the Constitution and to our principles. And so regardless of where you fall or what you conclude on this, the discussion right now is what conservatives should be talking about. We should be deciding what agenda we want from a president and then fitting a candidate to that agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Isabel Peterson. I'm from Huntington Beach, California, representing Marina High School. My question was, do you think that the overturning of Roe v. Wade will have any effect on the fall of sex trafficking and even the fall of abortion laws in other countries as well?
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, as you know, to America's shame, and I don't say that often, we have some of the most permissive abortion laws around the entire world. We're actually one of about a half dozen countries who allow late-term abortion, third trimester abortion, and most other countries, including European countries, don't allow that. So I don't know if the United States will play a leadership role on this topic, because what states are going to do now, red states are going to restrict abortion. Some of them are going to ban abortion. Blue states are going to be extremely permissive about abortion. They're going to become, sanctuary states for abortion. They're going to incentivize people to come and have abortions in their states. And my guess is blue states in our country will still have more radical abortion policy than a lot of other countries in the world. So it would be great if the United States would take the lead and ban abortion completely, and then use our economic power to convince our allies around the world to follow suit. But this is step one, that's step two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kira Imhoff. I'm from Huntington Beach, California, and thank you for coming here and speaking to us. It's an honor speaking to you.
Thank you for having me.
I was wondering, you said that you were going to prepare your speech on climate change, and I'm very curious about that. What are some of your main points and most interesting facts that you were going to tell us before? Sure.
Do you guys have like an hour and 10 minutes? Okay, so this is a speech this is a conversation that I really want to have with you guys. So the next time we're together, we will probably do that in full. But one of the things that I can not actually hear, but I can picture my producer's face in the background being like, oh no, this is going to be 15, 20-minute answer. There are two very pervasive narratives coming from the left right now about climate change. And one of them is to tell you and I, that we would be killing the earth if we have children. telling us that it's irresponsible to have children because of the carbon footprint that the children might leave on Earth, and because of what the children might suffer when the climate catastrophe happens. And that's completely false, not just from a conservative side, not just from a scientific side, but even climate scientists, climatologists, debunk that. That's actually just an anti-baby, anti-person narrative from the left. So that was one of the things I was going to talk about in depth, because I think it's really important for all of us, as we are all. You are looking ahead to your childbearing years, to creating families. I have a young daughter. I'm in the midst of building my family. It's very useful for us to know the truth about that. The truth about the green energy agenda is actually that the environmentalists and the elitist leftists are the ones creating a deadly environment. It's not changing climate. It's not even our man-made influence on the atmosphere that's creating a circumstance that leads to the death of young children. It's actually the left pushing, or the left buying, I should say, Russian propaganda about green energy to the point where US politicians have divested from fossil fuels and instead made us reliant on Putin. And this is where, if I get into this, I find this to be very interesting, but if I get into this now, it will take me 15 minutes. So I'm gonna have to ask you for a rain check for the rest of that answer, but it's really, really interesting.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Daniel Levy from Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm homeschooled. My question for you is back to the Roe v. Wade decision. Fox News published an article that there was some celebrity
Who did? I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Fox
you.
News
Oh, Fox.
this evening published an article quoting some celebrity who for some reason thinks we care what he says. But the argument he
who
made,
was it?
I don't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, he made the argument that, and we see all of this, you're gonna have a night of rage. He made the argument that with Roe v. Wade being overturned, that proves it's too dangerous to vote for Republicans. Do you think that it's gonna give the Democrats enough wind in their sails to actually maintain their position during the midterms? Or do you think that the fallout from the economics is gonna still be big enough to overpower this overturning of Roe v. Wade?
So this is really interesting. Abortion is one of the most polarizing topics, policies or discussions in our entire country, but it actually doesn't impact how people vote when they go to the polls. It doesn't change people's votes. So the Democrats have it completely miscalculated, trying to make this their midterm elections. The two voting demographics that might put abortion as their primary decision maker when they're deciding who to vote for are upper middle class white women and black women. And those two demographics are generally loyal to the Democratic Party. So the Democrats aren't going to bring any new voters into the fold for the election. But you're absolutely right. The economic crisis that we're facing right now, the fact that it costs $100 to fill up your gas tank, who can afford that? The fact that moms don't have baby formula when they need because of the Biden administration's policies. I mean, this is the stuff that matters. The fact that inflation is up 8.6%. The fact that we might face shortages because of our brittle supply chain. These are the things that cause voters to change parties, meaning cause people that might have voted for Biden to vote for whoever the Republican will be in 2024, or in the midterm elections, to kick out Democrats from the House and the Senate who are just parroting the Biden administration's policies. Joe Biden right now, if he wanted, could change gas prices. He could drill for oil. He could stop blocking the pipeline. He could create a stable energy policy so that investors who already have federal leases, the oil and gas companies, didn't worry about investing millions, if not billions of dollars. He could stop our reliance on China for our supply chain, stop our reliance on Russia for foreign oil, stop spending, stop printing, stop sending our money abroad. All of these things Joe Biden could do right now. He could do today, he could do tomorrow, and it would impact our economy. And the American people aren't stupid. They know that not only did Biden cause this, he did. They know that he can fix it, and he's lying to us about why he's not.
Right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathan Richardson from Palm Springs, California. I think it would be an understatement of the century to say that today has made a lot of people angry. And I think my question really comes down to, do you think that this ruling will cause conservatives in blue states such as California, who were very perfunctory on the issue of abortion, to now rise up and realize that we can really get rid of abortion in the entire US?
I hope so. I think that, as I said in my speech, I think that this is an incredible illustration to us about how important and how successful we can be if we fight the cultural battles. If we don't just talk about non-controversial monetary issues, as important as those are to people, and they are, but if we talk about the family, if we talk about sex, if we talk about abortion, if we talk about the transgender ideology, if we talk about critical race theory, those fights can be fought and can be won. And this is an example of how we can win. We did win by never giving up. And so it should be impetus for everybody across the country, every conservative, every Republican, to realize that it's now on them. It's not at the judicial level anymore. It's now on every voter to mobilize and to make sure that in their state legislatures, their elected representatives are solidly and principally and unwaveringly pro-life and abolish abortion in their state.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Semple. I'm from Oceanside, California, and my question is kind of tagging onto the last one about the potential for a Summer of Love 2.0. And the idea that there could be pretty severe rioting all over the country, and specifically in every single state that is still blue at this moment. So there's kind of three reactions that I see that could happen for individual people. One is to pull a Kyle Rittenhouse, the other is to flee or hide, and the third would be to try to convince the rioters or convince the people that their beliefs are wrong or are immoral. What would you say would be the best reaction for people, for example, tonight, who might have a rioter outside their doorstep? What would be the best, safest, and also most politically active way to respond to the situation?
Probably none of those three options. Probably the best thing to do is to demand politely and firmly that law enforcement actually enforce the laws of our nation. If someone's threatening you, if someone's breaking the law, if someone's vandalizing your property, if someone's going to cause you bodily harm, then it's law enforcement's duty, it's their responsibility to enforce the law. And so we should call on law enforcement to do that, and that includes law enforcement that are in political bodies, like I mentioned during my speech, like the Department of Justice, like Merrick Garland. He's the top law enforcement agent in our land, and it's his responsibility to enforce federal laws. And it's the Biden administration's responsibility to lead on this and to make sure that whether it's federal, whether it's state, or all the way down to local, to communities, that law enforcement is called to prevent this from happening. But I don't recommend a vigilante approach.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Buchanan High School. And my question is, so many people who were pro-choice were also pro-woman, but why do they not consider the fact that they are not giving women a choice because there are little girls who are unborn being aborted?
Yeah, because the left is dishonest. They say that they're pro-woman, but it's a lie. They hope that you and I and everyone listening to them, their Democratic voting base, won't actually research, that we won't actually analyze their voting record. They hope that we'll ignore the fact that they're anti-woman. They're anti-woman because they degrade motherhood, they degrade pregnancy, they degrade a mom who stays home with her children, they degrade a mom who educates her children through homeschooling, they degrade womanhood and motherhood at every turn. They support a transgender ideology which will lead to the erasure of women. They lie to women about the gender pay gap. They lie to women about needing a gender quota in the boardroom or anywhere else. Versus women achieving based on their own merits. The left oftentimes hates those who they claim to champion, those who they claim to love. And if you look past their surface level talking points, it's very easy to see. This case is, of course, as you said, a perfect example. Abortion not only hurts women who suffer the repercussions of this, it kills unborn women in the womb.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much.